I'd like to talk to you about strategy and not necessarily the design of that, because I think most organizations have that covered, or at least they're engaging people who allow that to be covered. I want to talk to you about the implementation of strategy. I think that a lot of time and effort and energy goes into developing it, and not enough time goes into what actually happens after a strategy has been designed and rolled out. And so, one of the biggest obstacles or the biggest opportunities, if you want to look at it that way, is around leadership capability. And in order to understand how leaders can help to implement a good strategy, I think we have to start with where are the challenges that leaders are faced with that actually prevent us from continuing to focus on strategy and to bring it to life in everyday conversations. So we've got challenges around shifting priorities. There's a lot of things that are coming in day to day, which aren't necessarily aligned with strategy, but they might be the highlight of someone's attention or focus. And so leaders are feeling like priorities are constantly shifting. There are distractions, more distractions than we have ever faced. We have such an attention crisis going on. That's not just with leaders, that's across the board. We have a diminishing attention span, and we are constantly trying to fill our time and maximize our time. What that leads to often is an ineffective use of time. We're multitasking, we're trying to do emails while we're having a conversation with someone. We're having a conversation with someone, but we're thinking about something else, or we're overthinking what the intention behind the conversation is. And so we're not effectively using our time. We're working longer hours, we're doing more than we've ever done before, but we're still not feeling like we've got enough. There is this ever increasing workload. Things are always added, but nothing seems to be taken away. And leaders often just expect that that will be the case, that someone at some point is going to take work away from them. It's not the case necessarily. We have a tightening of costs. There's enormous pressure on organizations, regardless of the industry that you're in, to reduce costs and improve the effectiveness and productivity and the outputs of what they're delivering. And we have this space of volatility around engagement and retention. We have a really transient workplace, and leaders need to understand that that will continue to be the case unless they do something in order to really slow that down and bring people together. And so the solution is that we need to look at what the desired needs and wants are of the individual. We are not going to get better at applying and implementing strategy if we're not actually looking at what an individual, what a leader wants and needs and desires. There are clear expectations that are required. We need to have this constant ability to adjust and not lock things in concrete, that we need this agility and this dynamic approach to the things that we're doing. And we need to have transparent communication. That doesn't mean that we share everything with everyone, but it does mean that if there's an issue, we'll address it. And if there's something to celebrate, we'll address that as well. And if there's a problem with our relationships or the opportunity to strengthen our relationships, that we're talking about these things. The idea is that transparent communication is quite open and it's honest, but it's also very kind. And it's not going to go against relationships. We need to have stronger relationships. We need to have stronger relationships with ourselves, stronger relationships with our team. I think particularly we need to have stronger relationships with our peers. I think there's a connection between the strength of a relationship with a peer and the success of a business unit. It's Collaboration is what we are most in need of. We need to be able to create efficiencies across departments, and that requires us to get along with our peers. And this is something we don't often do. Often we're in competition with them. And the solution also requires this continual connection to strategy. How do we continue to bring everything that we're doing back to where are we going? What's the direction? What did we decide? What's the best thing for the organization? And what we're wanting is our outcomes longer term. And we need to have capable teams around that. So we need to reduce the dependency that our team have on us, and we need to start to build out their skills, whether that is emotional intelligence or communication skills, or whether it's technical skills and how we engage in AI and those kind of things. So my approach when I'm working to implement strategy and bring all of these things to life is to start with awareness of self. When we have greater awareness of who we are, we can understand what we bring and how we can be part of the solution, as well as how we might be part of the problem. Without awareness, there's a tendency to push responsibility or blame outside of ourselves. Once we've achieved an awareness of self, then we start to expand out to this awareness of the peer dynamics. So we can start to see how our relationships with our peers affects our ability to implement strategy. Once we've done that, we can then start to look at the strategy and how that might come into practice and play out in the day to day, the week to week. So we start to look at operating rhythm and what are the systems and structures in place that will enable us to move in the direction that we're wanting to move in. That might be alignment to values. As I said, operating rhythm, it might be the types of conversations, how we're connecting and communicating. Once we've done that, that then ties into awareness of environment. So, what is our environment doing to either support us to align and continue to move towards our strategy, and what things need to perhaps be removed or adjusted so that the environment is conducive. There was a great book called Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy, and he talks about our willpower and our internal desire is only as strong as the external environment allows us. So we want to understand, along with that awareness of self, is how does our environment play into the success of a strategy. And then, of course, we want to understand and have some awareness of the economics. So, what's happening from an unemployment perspective? What's happening from a generational employment? We've got a number of generations. We actually have the most number of generations in the workforce today than we ever have before. What does that do to how we apply and implement our strategy? What about the living crisis and the affordability and what that means for the stress that people are already feeling in life? And so really understanding the economic factors that come into play. And so the approach that is taken is around, this holistic view. It's not just about the strategy and what that looks like on paper. It's how we apply that and how a leader is fundamental to the application and the success of that. I think the final piece of awareness is around the awareness of the paradox. So, the paradox is that often when we're implementing a strategy, when we're leading a team, when we're engaging with our peers in the direction, that things can seem contradictory. And it's not that we're doing it on purpose. It's not that we are a bunch of hypocrites that need to make a decision and go there. It is that often in today's environment, we're wanting multiple things that seem like they're in conflict or opposition with each other. And I think the shift in how we're thinking and how we're seeing things is the key to the solution. So if we can change the way that we view things, we can then change the way that we respond, and we can change the way that we plan and prepare and actually put into process the concepts around the strategy that we've spent time on. So, my approach is very much around understanding and being really curious about where you're at in your organization and what is it that you are struggling with? Where are your challenges? And from a leadership perspective, how is it that I might help you to overcome those challenges? Along with my work as a facilitator and an executive coach, I am also accredited with some psychometric assessments. So often I will use things like DISC to help understand, where there are differences in personalities. I will use LSI, which is Lifestyles Inventory, to really amplify the awareness of a leader and what they're bringing to a conversation and to a team environment. That includes the 360 component. I have accreditation in emotional intelligence reporting, along with a few other things like, have values and spiral. And so I want to end with this concept around my approach, and that is the leadership is less about sharing what you know, and it's more about unlocking the abilities in others so that they realize their full potential. I am a huge advocate for leaders as coach, and that leaders can ask more than they tell, and they can listen more than they show. When we're doing that, it takes the pressure off us. We can be aware of what our own needs are, but we can also see the needs of others at play, and we can really collaborate. I think we use the word collaboration and the word empowerment too freely. I don't actually think that enough of us are really focusing on bringing that to life and implementing it. And so my focus is very much around that as well. If there is anything that you'd like to talk about or explore further with what I've shared today, please reach out for a conversation. My approach is definitely tailored to what your needs are. And yeah, I'd be happy to explore that a little bit further. Thanks so much.